been 2 years, you know. All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the City of Newcastle special meeting. It is 6 p.m. and City Council will recess to executive session to discuss potential litigation and legal risk pursuant to RCW 42.30.1101I for approximately 60 minutes. I anticipate being back here about 7 p.m.
Hello, 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 hello. Check, check, check. Hello, 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 hello. Check, check, check.
good evening, everybody, and welcome back to City Hall. Gives me great pleasure to be here tonight. It's been over 2 years. Our last meeting in person was mid-February 2020. So welcome back. City Council is coming back into live session. We concluded an executive session where items were pertaining to potential litigation and legal risk pursuant to RCW 42.30.1101I for approximately 45 minutes. And with that, I'm calling this meeting to order. Will you please rise and join me in the flag salute? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. City Clerk White, will you please do a roll call?
Deputy Mayor Sherlock.
Present.
Councilmember Griffin.
Here.
Councilmember Villasenor.
Here.
Councilmember Lacocha.
Here.
Very good. Councilmember Charbonneau. It's a great opportunity for the
Here.
mic check. Yeah. Yeah. Councilmember Clark. Huh.
Okay.
There
Here.
you go.
Right, we get to play with new toys.
Okay, maybe a little rocky around the edges tonight, but we'll get there, I'm sure. I think we're all relearning, and we have 4 new council members, their first meeting live, so welcome, welcome. Okay, we have a quorum of 7-0 tonight. Agenda approval. Any objections to the agenda? Seeing none, agenda is approved. Public comment. Welcome, public. City Clerk White, I'm not sure if you or Director Bronze is managing public comment.
Well, it's a little bit of both,
Okay.
Madam Mayor. I don't have anyone signed up currently in the meeting room to comment, but we might have someone on the Zoom meeting who is interested. And I'm going to let Mr. Braun.
So it's up to you if we do in person first and then go to Zoom. I think we should probably do one and then complete that and then go to the other.
So if you'd like to call for anyone who is not signed up
Sure.
to confirm that we don't have
Yeah,
anyone
yeah.
in person to speak.
Are there any members in the audience tonight?
There's one, Tam Kameen had her hand up, so she's been promoted to the panel and she can unmute herself and speak.
Thank you. I'm Tamara Kameen from Olympus, and I would like to speak to the salary schedule revisions. And early in 2020, the council passed a fiscal sustainability plan that had 4 items. And those 4 items included 3 items for increasing our revenue and 1 item for reducing our costs. That item to reduce our costs was combining the part-time position for the activities events person with the communications contractor. Now, as I see in the agenda bill, the city manager is proposing to undo that 1 cost reduction item and actually increase the former cost from what it used to be, creating a higher paid communication position and bringing back an events position. And this is being done rather than prioritizing the community activities, tasks, and the communication activities, and leveraging our CAC members for activities and also prioritizing what communications and activities we need. Also in the salary schedule revision, there is an add to headcount included in the proposal for planning. We have a person who's associate planner right now who needs to be promoted to senior planner, which I am all in favor of. I think that's good, given the need and given the qualifications of that employee. But I am not in favor of retaining an unfunded position that shows that we need 3 people in planning. If we need a associate person later on, I think we would substitute the higher level senior position. So I am not in favor of adding that. So here we are, right when our city manager is leaving. That looks like we're looking to add specific headcount rather than leveraging a new perspective from either an interim and or a new city manager who could evaluate what is actually needed. And it may be that we need other headcounts other than these 2 particular ones. So I am against adding the 0.6 headcount for events, increasing communications, and adding a planning headcount. And there are 3 things I know. One is that every organization wants more communication. There's no limit to how much communication people are asking for, but we need to look at what is actually needed for the city. Number 2, every sustainable organization is doing more with less people than they used to. So when we continue to say, but we had more people earlier, that's not a valid argument in my mind. And certainly adding headcount to any budget is the most expensive way to produce a budget. Headcount is not a one-time cost, it's an escalating cost, and it has to be done very judiciously. And I would like to see our council to take that kind of a perspective.
And I ask that you wrap up your comments, please.
I'm sorry?
Wrap up your comments, please.
Okay, yes, that was the last thing, and I would like to, I'm just show my displeasure of adding those 2 things to the budget, or to the agenda. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, City Clerk White and Director Bronze. I will close the public comment. We have no ceremonial presentations tonight. Council comment. Deputy Mayor Sherlock, you want to kick us off back in the big room here?
Sure, thanks, Mayor. I don't have any prepared comments, just want to say welcome back. And it's really, really great to see everybody in person and see your smiling faces and see that you're actually looking at me. Because on Zoom, you can't tell who's looking at who. So I'm really grateful to be back with all of you. So thank you.
All right. Councilmember Griffin, what do you have for us tonight?
Yes, I received an email today from Walmart saying that they have a program going for health and welfare, and they're going to have things going on at their stores on Saturday, the 21st of April, and they wanted me to encourage people to come out. And the other day, Pradham and I went through the city and talking to several people, businesses, checking to see how they were doing and asking them, all of them, the managers and the owners that we talked to, were feeling good about the pandemic being just pretty much over, and that their business was pretty much where it should be. Most of them had applied for PPE and got 2 helpings of it. There's one that applied for 2 helpings but only took 1 because they didn't need it. So it looks like our city's coming back pretty well. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Councilmember Villasenor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This week we got the privilege of paying our federal income taxes. I know it sounds pretty funny to say it's a privilege, but I really do believe that a society such as ours paying our income tax is an important part of making sure that we all have a piece of this amazing thing that's been built for us. Some of that money is coming back toward us with regard to ARPA, and I'm glad Council Member Griffin and Lakota had gone out and talked to people, but in ARPA stands for rescue, and I think this is an important time for us still to make sure that all of our businesses and the people of this community can make it to the end of this pandemic, in a way that sets them up for long-term success. And so I'm looking forward to our discussion about it tonight, and hopefully we can provide that aid to people. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Lagotia.
Hello and welcome. It's good to see a few people out here, and it's a pleasure to be here. I just wanted to call out the seniors of Newcastle. We have some amazing programs that Teens Who Care runs for the seniors. We've been doing it for seniors at Newcastle and the surrounding cities. And we are continuing to expand the programs. We're also asking the seniors to come out and connect with me. Please give me your ideas, things that you would like to see. We will be going back to the library with our programs once they allow us. And we are also doing some of these activities for the seniors in Issaquah Senior Center. There's a Renton Senior Center where we are going to soon start some activities there. We have tons of volunteers, young volunteers who are very enthusiastic. They want to connect intergenerationally with, with our older adults. So seniors, just feel free to write to me and just give me your ideas, and we can have a lot of activities going on for you. That's all I have. Thank you.
All right, Councilmember Charbonneau, what do you have for us?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I actually do have quite a few items just by coincidence. I promise I won't always be this long. Great to be back. I want to speak to the accessibility. It's so great. Thank you for staff for putting this all together, not just continuing on Zoom, but also a YouTube channel where people can view. That is important to state, I believe. I am very excited to let folks know that we are having the Asian American and Pacific Islander Commission planning meeting. The commission is not formed. We are having a planning meeting in partnership with the Newcastle Library. It is going to be their first event back since COVID. Vicki Heck over at the library was very excited. I want to thank Vicki and also Kate Langsdorf for helping us put that together. It is going to be April 27th from 6:30 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. We were able to create a flyer, and I will be absolutely promoting that. And we're inviting all folks that identify as AAPI to come in a collaborative space, talk with us so we can build a commission that is sort of created for folks that identify as AAPI, and also created by folks that identify as AAPI in our community that has over 34% that do identify so. The Issaquah School District has 3 different levies currently on the ballot. I'm not telling you which way to vote on them. I'm simply asking you to be a voter in a special election that is not during the normal cycle time. Roughly, as people love correcting me on Facebook, if you live east of Coal Creek Parkway, it's not exact, you should look up your school district. You are very likely in the Issaquah School District, so be a voter. The deadline for that, getting your ballot in, is April 26th, so please be involved. I wanted to highlight too, I actually had the privilege to give a keynote speech at the Young Democrats of America 2022 convention. And I know this is a nonpartisan body, but I just think it's very unique and cool to get sort of a national stage where I get to talk a little bit about my experience with Newcastle. I also had a very nice conversation with a gentleman from the Young Democrats of Idaho who happens to be Councilmember Griffin's grandson. And just thought it was a very unique experience. I wanted to highlight that. I talked with Verity, who is our new president of the, I'm not sure if president is the right term, Newcastle Chamber of Commerce, and she wanted me to emphasize folks to attend the Eastside Regional Business Forum, which will be April 28th, I believe, in partnership with Snoqualmie and Issaquah Chambers. And then I will be meeting with ARCH, which is the Regional Coalition for Affordable Housing, tomorrow, working on some of those issues that we were talking about in the last meeting. So I wanted folks to know there is follow-up being done there. I'm gonna be annoying and try to work about this issue and try to work some of these issues forward into our planning as a city and keep making that progress. I apologize for the length. Thank you.
Councilmember Clark, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. the last meeting I mentioned there would be a flag retirement ceremony with my VFW post, and I'm happy to report that we retired over 400 flags on Saturday. We got a couple here. I was actually surprised. I put the box out with only a week's notice, so we got a couple. So if anybody in here donated, thank you. It was a very good ceremony that we had. We do it on Lake Sammamish, by the way. It's just north of the boat launch area on Lake Sammamish. Flintoff's Funeral Home is a big partner with our VFW, and they let us use their property. So a really good event. Next year, I hope to have some permanent box out for a longer period of time so that people can drop off a flag anytime. All of our council members recently got an email from the Renton PTA. So I just want to put in a plug for that. On May 24th, there will be an auction and our annual council dinner for the Renton PTA. I asked Kate Langsdorf to put it in our newsletter. You probably can find it from other sources, but I know that council members Griffin and Lakoti and I will be there, and I'll be taking my lovely wife, who I see is in the audience tonight. So anyway, I encourage you to go. It's a good cause if you have any interest. So that's it for me. Oh, one more thing. It is good to be back in person. Everybody said that. But I think it's really important to emphasize that back in person, when you're facing people and looking in the eye, it's a little bit harder to be uncivil. So I'm really counting on that we can have some, because I'll just be honest, we've had some little biting discussions, let's say that, online. So here's hoping for a more civil discourse amongst the 7 of us going forward. Thank you.
All right, thank you, everyone. That brings us to item 7.1, which is the mayor's comments. I don't really have anything tonight. We did not have an update from King County Health on COVID. Those have been reduced to once per month, so I will have one at the next meeting. That tells me that's good news because we don't need to talk all the time about COVID, apparently. I don't believe I have anything else. So council committees, while I have the mic, we did have a salary and benefits committee meeting, but I may have reported on that last meeting. I think I did. Okay, well, then we're good. And how about finance committee, Councilmember Villasenor?
The Finance Committee will be meeting tomorrow, actually,
Okay.
so I'll have something for you in the next meeting.
All right, quiet week. Regional committees, Councilmember Clark, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mayor Newing. I sent out, and I'm sorry I sent it late, to the city clerk some notes on the Metropolitan Solid Waste Advisory Committee that we met a week ago Friday. So a couple highlights. So as I had mentioned previously, only a couple of bills related to solid waste made it through the legislative process, and how that will affect Newcastle is still to be determined. They are discussing their new rate structure. So once they've decided that on a county level for the solid waste division, and I'll have to be talking to our city manager, and he's been out, and how specifically we will be negotiating with Waste Management, our supplier. But essentially, rates are going to go up for the next several years. And just to put it into perspective, this is a generic number, but the average household starting this year would see about a 70-cent increase in their rate, and then going up to maybe $1 by 2028. Those are generic numbers. There's also a lot of money is being spent this year by the Solid Waste Division on a new recycling program called RePlus. That's part of how our rates are going up, and they're going to encourage businesses to recycle and apply for grants to promote recycling processes. I do have some links that I will be sending out to the council, and I have Kate Langsdorf put them in the newsletter as well. If you have more questions, please see me separately about it.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Sharpenow, go ahead, please.
Yes, so I have 2 actually. So I attended as Newcastle's delegate to the Eastside Transportation Partnership for April on April 8th. Some things to note: masks are actually still required on Metro, contrary to the grocery store or where else you might go. But the good news is they will give you a free mask. The Orca website and mobile app are being phased in as means to travel on Orca besides just the traditional card. Their goal is to fully phase out the cards because of the plastic use that occurs with them by 2023, but for now you're good with either option. And then they talked about some programs they are working towards with building sort of 2 routes on I-405 rapid bus transit. They're targeting that for 2026, pending a couple ballot measures, but they are, I thought it was pretty cool, double-decker electric buses plan to run the route north to south from Renton area to about Shoreline, which would obviously affect us here in Newcastle, and then east to west from about the Shoreline area on the west to sort of the Bothell-Woodinville area in the east. So working hard with the transportation package that was passed by the state to provide more transit options for folks, and hope we can see some of that here in Newcastle, having such a major transportation corridor. And then I attended Sound Cities Association as the Public Issues Committee representative on April 13th. There was a lot of discussion on local climate change action. There was a House Bill 1099, that sort of everyone thought would pass and died in the final seconds, and certain cities have taken actions within recently since the legislative session to adopt some of those items, and I'd like to try to bring some of those items here with some due time, as well as discussion of the King County Strategic Climate Action Plan, as well as a framework put forward by some environmental experts called Sustainable and Resilient Frontline Communities, a lot of acronyms, sorry, as well as certain cities that have been involved in what is called the East Side Climate Challenge, which I'm trying to inquire about, something that Bellevue and Issaquah are involved in that I'm working to inquire about. There was a discussion on affordable housing and sort of what local accountability framework we want to look at there. They are organizing the 2023 sewer rate costs and wastewater treatment costs, and the Puget Sound Regional Council presented their draft regional transportation plan, which is ongoing and seeking feedback. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for covering that PIC meeting for me last week while I was in a very cold Oregon. All right, so Planning Commission and Community Activities Commission, Director Bronze, do we have either of the chairs in the Zoom room?
The Planning Commission chair is here, Madam Mayor.
Oh, is he?
Oh, not in the room, sorry, I'm on Zoom.
Oh. I told you guys it's going to be a long night. All right. Welcome, Chair Gadzik. And I see Director Bronze gave me a hold off a minute thing.
Would you like me to proceed? I don't
There
know
we
if there's
go.
somebody in the room that should go ahead of me.
We can see you. Go ahead, Chair Gadzik.
Thank you. I filed a written report, but I wanted to talk about a little bit about one of the items on the written report, which is revising Newcastle's Planned Unit Development Ordinance, PUD ordinance. This is one of the things on our work plan, and the commission discussed it at an earlier meeting and accepted a staff recommendation to defer any action on it to a later date. I think part of the staff recommendation was based on the fact that there are staff turnover now and being a little shorthanded, and there not being real urgency on this item. It was something that could be deferred. But I want to point out the significance of this to the city council in case there is some energy among you to bring it back with some direction. The reason is that planned unit development requirements are an alternative to development agreements. And development agreements can be controversial. When the city signs a development agreement, there are often controversy among the public, suspicions that there is a sweet deal being crafted with a developer, that something is being negotiated in the back room. Well, the development agreements are all quite legal. They're all done in accordance with city code, but a planned unit development is a substitute for a development agreement. A planned unit development ordinance basically lays out certain incentives so that a developer, if he does this, he gets this accommodation somewhere else. And it's all written out, it's all very clear. It's all transparent, and it doesn't involve an individual conversation necessarily with a developer on a particular site with unique accommodations. So if the council was concerned about development agreements being used too often, or if you just don't like using development agreements, the planned unit development ordinance is a way to reduce the use of development agreements. So that's mainly the message I wanted to give to you, that there is a consideration to this that goes beyond kind of like the everyday ordinary business of planning. There is maybe a political dimension to this, or a public issue dimension to it. So perhaps later in the year, after we have a new planning director, and maybe you've had some time to think about this, you might want to bring it back. And maybe you don't, but I just wanted you to be aware of the connection with development agreements to planned unit development requirements. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Gadzik. I don't know about my fellow council members, but I think that would be very important to keep on the horizon for the Planning Commission. But I think maybe, bring it back toward the end of the year or fall, when you have, new teams in place on the staff side. Seeing some head nods up here, so. All right, thank you. How about Chair Majors? Is she in the audience tonight? Okay. And then you do have a written report from Chair Majors for the Community Activities Commission.
Madam Mayor, it looks like Kate came on. I'm not sure if she might have something to say.
Are there any questions for Community Coordinator Langsdorf? Good evening.
Good evening.
I don't see any questions. I think we're good. Thank you so much.
Enjoy.
All right. Okay, moving on. Unfortunately, City Manager Wyman is a little under the weather, recovering from illness tonight, and is unable to join us. But you do have his City Manager report. If there are any questions, we are fortunate enough to have all of our directors with us. So I'm sure they can address the questions you may have. Okay, seeing none. All right, moving on. Consent agenda. Any objections to approving the consent agenda as presented? Hearing none, consent agenda is approved, 7-0. We have no public hearings. We have no unfinished business. We are into general business. Item 11.1, potential council action subsequent to the 6 p.m. executive session. Are there any motions out there? Councilmember Charbonneau, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move to authorize the city manager to sign the One Washington Memorandum of Understanding between Washington municipalities on behalf of the city of Newcastle, which allows for multiple Washington cities and counties to jointly negotiate with certain opioid manufacturers and distributors to possibly come to a resolution regarding the damages caused by the opioid crisis.
Second.
All right, it's been moved by Councilmember Charbonneau, seconded by Councilmember Clark, to authorize the city manager to sign the One Washington Memorandum of Understanding between Washington municipalities on behalf of the city of Newcastle, which allows for multiple Washington cities and counties to jointly negotiate with certain opioid manufacturers and distributors to possibly come to a resolution regarding the damages caused by the opioid crisis. Councilmember Charbonneau, would you like to speak to your motion?
Sure, this might sound, I think this is a very great action by us. It shows a lot of leadership showing to be involved and create some accountability for the opioid crisis. I was really impressed myself as someone that has, lobbied for mental health legislation, serves on a mental health board, with sort of how comprehensive the memorandum was in accounting for all the really holistic factors of the opioid crisis. And I think I don't know how to clearly explain this to folks, but it's sort of a, if we opt in and the settlement goes our way, we would be the beneficiary of some funds. If it doesn't, there's no real penalty for us. So it is, I think, a pretty clear win-win, and that's why I motion thusly.
All right, Councilmember Clark, anything to add?
I just see no downside for our city, and I would pretty much echo what Councilmember Charbonneau said, so.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, motion on the floor to authorize the city manager to sign the One Washington Memorandum of Understanding between Washington municipalities on behalf of the city of Newcastle, which allows for multiple Washington cities and counties to jointly negotiate with certain opioid manufacturers and distributors to possibly come to a resolution regarding the damages caused by the opioid crisis. All in favor of the motion, please state aye.
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 Any opposition? Ayes have it, 7-0. All right, thank you. Is there another motion somebody would like to make pertaining to item 11.1?
I will move to authorize the city manager to sign the settlement agreement fully resolving City of Newcastle notice of violation case number CODE 20-002.
Second.
All right, it's been moved by Councilmember Villaseñor, seconded by Deputy Mayor Sherlock, to authorize the city manager to sign the settlement agreement fully resolving City of Newcastle notice of violation case number code 20-002. Councilmember Villaseñor, would you like to speak to your motion?
I have nothing to add, thank you.
Deputy Mayor Sherlock.
Nothing to add.
All right. Motion's on the floor to authorize the city manager to sign the settlement agreement fully resolving City of Newcastle notice of violation case number code 20-002. All in favor, please state aye.
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 Opposed? Ayes have it, 7-0. Thank you. Moving on to item 11.2. City Council, first of all, I'd like to welcome Greg Prothman from PMP. He is the firm we hired to manage the recruiting for our soon-to-be vacant city manager position. And with him tonight, we are joined by Bob Larson, who has met with all of the council members one-on-one. And I am looking for a motion to name Bob Larson as the interim city manager and bring back a contract for his assignment at our next meeting. Would anybody like to make that motion?
I will.
Go ahead, Councilmember Clark.
I make a motion that we acquire the services of Bob Larson as interim city manager and direct the staff to, I believe, to bring back a contract for his appointment at the next meeting.
Second.
All right, it's been moved by Councilmember Clark, seconded by Deputy Mayor Sherlock, to name Bob Larson as interim city manager and direct staff to bring back a contract for his services to our next meeting. Councilmember Clark, anything to add to your, would you like to speak to your motion?
We all had a chance to meet with Bob recently, one-on-one, and I personally was impressed, and I think his qualifications are well suited for what we need in the interim time here.
Deputy Mayor Sherlock, anything to add?
Yeah, I agree. I think I found Bob to be very pleasant, and he said what I wanted to hear, which was he's just gonna not rock the boat and help our staff continue to do the great work that they do. And so I'm excited for him to help us get through this process of finding a permanent city manager.
Anyone else? Okay, I just want to say that I've been very impressed with Mr. Larson's conversations that I've had with him, and I'm looking forward to hopefully working with him. And I do believe he'll provide the stability we need in the interim until we do complete the recruitment process for a city manager. All right, there's a motion on the floor to name Bob Larson interim city manager and direct staff to bring back a contract for his services at our next meeting. All in favor of that motion, please state aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it, 7-0. Congratulations, Mr. Larson. Mr. Prothman, would you like to speak about the recruitment process at all? Thank you. Oh,
Wow, I got it. Good evening, Madam Mayor, and thanks for the opportunity to speak in front of council tonight. It's a pleasure to be here. In person, it's the first council meeting I've attended in person also in about 2 years, and I've attended a lot of Zoom meetings. So thank you for that opportunity. Indeed, let's talk about the city manager recruitment process. I have had a chance to speak briefly with everyone except Councilmember Griffin, who I apologize to today because I promised I would call him back yesterday afternoon, and I forgot. So I was the first guy I went to talk to today. But I want to chat a little bit about the process and hopefully tonight to get a sense of those skills, talents, and abilities that you might be looking for in your next city manager. And so process-wise, we're already starting to work with staff on getting the requisite information to develop your position profile. And so that's an ongoing process now. From tonight's conversation, I hope to get at least the majority of the information I might need for the ideal candidate characteristics that we want to include in the profile. That document will come back to you about this time next week for you to take a look at and provide any additional edits, comments, revisions we need to make sure that I really understand what it is you're looking for in your next city manager. So once we have that completed, the other item before I move on to that next topic is the salary range. That's always the one thing we want to talk about in terms of compensation. I've been doing this for about 25 years now. I hate to say that because it really dates me, but since my time as a city manager. But I would offer that I have a fairly keen sense of what the market is now calling for in city manager compensation. And I've been watching that throughout the region. Yeah, and we do work all up and down the West Coast and as far east as Nebraska for city manager recruitments. You know, Rob's compensation, if I recall correctly, is around $196,000 currently, and I think he may have a car allowance in there also, as well as benefits and the usual stuff that city managers enjoy. So, from my perspective, I think that top-end compensation is adequate for the size of city. I would not recommend you go much higher than a recommended range of, say, 165 to, say, 200. And that gives you plenty of flexibility to hire a rising star at the bottom of the range and watch that person grow as they become a really outstanding city manager. Or if you happen to find a person at the top of their game and you want to compensate them near the top of the range, you have that opportunity. So that's the thinking behind establishing a fairly broad range like that. Let me stop there and ask council if you have any questions on that topic before I move on.
okay. Any questions for Mr. Prothman? Oh, go ahead, Councilmember Villasenor. Oh. Go ahead.
I take up a lot of space here, so I can't see. I know there are a number of city manager positions in the region right now that are up. How does that affect us, and how does that affect you in terms of like how broad a net you cast geographically?
Yeah, I'm aware of at least a couple. Certainly Burien, and I also heard that our friends at Sammamish are now looking for a city manager. Of course, much larger communities, and they will attract a different kind of manager with a different level of experiences. So the good news is we're not in really direct competition here locally with any city of comparable size. So I think that's great. However, I should prepare you for what I think we're going to get back in terms of a response. In all of our searches in the last 6 months, we are seeing, well, as an example, and I can say this because it's all public knowledge now, I was helping the city of Bainbridge Island look for a community development director. And they were paying a very nice salary of $176,000, I recall, at the top end, and we got a total of 13 candidates. I was flabbergasted. I was really quite scared until we actually got to the closing date. Now, that was the bad news. The good news is we had 6 or 7 of those candidates, of which were competent, and 4 or 5 were really good. And they gave the city manager there, I think, a difficult choice. I'm anticipating a similar kind of response. Before, I actually had the privilege of doing Rob's recruitment when he became city manager here some number of years back. And I can recall we might have had 35 or 40 applicants for that job. If we get 12 to 14 to 15 applicants, that's about what I will expect. Now, that will come as a result of a very, very aggressive recruitment process, where we'll place 8 or 10 ads in all of the local periodicals and journals at a national level that city managers and city administrators would normally frequent to find opportunities for employment. We'll send out somewhere in the neighborhood of 800 letters of direct mail invitation to city managers, city administrators in the 13 or 14 western United States and cities of comparable size. So we will not be, and plus I'll be making quite a number of phone calls to people that I know locally that I think this would be a good move for them. And so given that level of effort and getting back 14 or 15 responses, I'm going, but it really is a symptom of the Great Resignation. It's here, it's happening, and we're seeing that in every search we're doing. But we're still finding candidates, we're still finding good folks, and if for some unforeseen reason we don't find the candidate we're looking for, I'm going to encourage council not to select. Don't settle for second best. Let's go back out and resample the market. So, any questions on those topics at all?
Councilmember Clark, I believe you.
Oh, I'm sorry, we have one more question.
I'll hold my question, thank you.
Oh, okay.
Sorry about that, I think I walked right across your question there.
I just had a question about that. So if you've had to go back out, do you have better success at attracting?
Yeah, it becomes a different slice in time. And what I mean by that, during this particular time that we're recruiting, there is a group of managers and administrators who, for a variety of reasons, are looking for jobs. It might be, maybe they're becoming incompatible with the city where they're currently after a long tenure. Maybe they're trailing, their spouse is taking a job. Maybe they want to move. I mean, there's a whole bunch of reasons why people choose to move jobs. And so that different slice in time can sometimes attract another group of candidates that weren't eligible to apply the first time. We don't necessarily have, unless we think for some reason the feedback we get is that the salary is low, as an example, which I don't think is going to be the case here, but indeed if that were the case, then we would have to revisit the salary and talk more about what a fair compensation is, because maybe the market's telling us that the compensation is not at market level.
Okay, and I think I shared with you that I've worked in municipal government for a number of years, and I work for a larger agency, but I wonder if you would also send your materials to those larger agencies, because I know of director level who would be interested in small city management.
By comparable size, and I sort of covered that pretty quickly, I should define that a bit better. 5 to 10,000 to 100,000.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
The full gamut.
See, comparable.
Okay. and then I'm sorry.
By the way, I have to say, Renton was my first municipal employer, so I have a soft spot in my heart there for him.
Ditto. And then one more question. Are you seeing a diverse group of applicants? Because I'm hoping we, get women, we get folks of color. I hope we have a diverse pool to select from. Are you seeing that?
Yes and no,
Okay.
honestly. The smaller numbers mean we see less diversity, candidly. Not, the larger numbers, the bigger pools, we had better opportunities now. Having said that, we will certainly recruit in all of the diversity job sites that we think would be relevant and helpful to our meeting that goal.
Okay.
But I don't want to overpromise.
Okay. It's kind of like buying one lottery ticket versus 5. Your chances are better to win.
Perhaps, yes.
Okay. All right.
I would hope the odds are a little better, but nonetheless.
All right. So any further questions? I'll let you continue if you.
Good. Well, mostly I just wanted to cover the process briefly, and that is once we go out to ad, we'll be out recruiting for about 4 to 5 weeks, maybe 6 weeks. When we'll receive back some number of those, some number of applications, and we'll ask them for, of course, their cover letter, their resume, And we'll ask them to write on a number of essay questions that we think would be relevant to the job. It's always helpful to see if they can string sentences together accurately, and it's a level of effort that I want them to achieve to show some seriousness about the application. So I'll review those. My colleague Andrew Neiditz will also be working with me. He's the former city manager of Lakewood, Washington, former ICMA vice president. Bob knows him well also, and I think we speak highly of him. We'll be working on this together. We're going to review all of the applicants. We'll pick some number of those, and we'll do some semifinal interviews right away before we come back to you. I want to make sure that I spend at least an hour with each of the most promising top 10 or 12 candidates before I come back to you in executive session to tell you what we have and what we've learned. I will certainly bring a list of all the candidates who applied, but you'll see pretty quickly that I'm not wasting your time on a number of those that simply aren't responsive. So we'll go through the candidates that we have. We'll talk about their upside and my concerns and where they might need support. And then from that group, you'll select the ones you think are most laudable for a final interview. We'll then work together on developing a final interview process that could involve panels, that could involve community members, it could involve an evening reception with the community. There's a variety of opportunities that we'll talk through to make sure you get enough advice from those you value in terms of strengths and weaknesses in these candidates so you can make an informed decision. And also the community has a chance to participate in this process and provide you advice too. Prior to those interviews, we'll of course do a pretty deep dive into their references and their criminal history and education verification. So hopefully by the time we're done with the process, we've really got a pretty good sense of who these people are and who the selected candidate is and what's, that we know them pretty well. Okay. So that's really the 5-minute tour of the process. Any questions at this point?
All right, any questions? Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Great, thanks. So I'm assuming we start with putting together the, like, what's it called, a pamphlet or?
The position profile, yes.
Profile, okay.
Yeah.
And so that's what you're trying to get from us tonight is
Yep.
kind of.
Yep. This will be the next. Yeah,
Okay.
you got the cliff notes and you're reading ahead on me. So, no, just I would ask if you have a moment or two. Was there any other questions first of all before I move on?
Any further questions? Comments, or you want comments on what they're looking for?
Yeah.
maybe?
So if we were, for those of you who watched TV in the 80s and 90s. No, it wasn't black and white, Bob, but thank you. If you watch Star Trek, there was this thing called a hologram where you could build something here out of nothing, right? So if we were to build the perfect city manager, what skills, talents, and abilities would you want to see in that person in an ideal world? What would you like to see in terms of what I should be looking for, screening for as we go through the process? And I would say that there is no perfect candidate, of course, but it gives us some insights into you as a council, what's important to you and what we can keep in mind as we go through and start this process.
So not to put anybody on the spot, but I was going to go around the room, but I'll take volunteers first. Councilmember Clark, go ahead, please.
We can certainly suggest a few, but I would also suggest that perhaps we each email you a list. I mean, it's just kind of, wasn't expecting to talk about this at the moment, but.
Well, and thank you. I would love your email and love to see that. And if anybody feels the need to have a one-on-one conversation, I'm certainly willing to do that too. I'm not trying to rush you through a process. I would like to get enough feedback in a timely fashion to get this document back to you by next week, so we can stay on our schedule that we've adopted. But yes, please.
Yeah, well, all right, so I would just start out by saying the candidate should have, obviously, prior experience working with, ideally a council, or because we all have different viewpoints, so that person should be a good communicator and facilitator, because they're going to be subjected to all kinds of different viewpoints, and that person should have the ability to sort through it and keep discussions focused and on track and, not wander off topic, so to speak.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Councilmember Charbonneau, go ahead, please.
Sure, yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, I appreciate all of that in your work so far. I would say you talked about the sort of broad view of what I would like to see. You talked about someone who might be a rising star. I would very much welcome that. I was having a pretty robust conversation with this about this with our new interim city manager, Bob. I would welcome that. I think our current city manager was someone who had not been a city manager before and, worked the way up through. I would love to see, if there's someone that can grow with the city. I think that'd be absolutely great. Regardless of where they might be from, even if they want to relocate to Newcastle or anything of that nature. I'd like to see someone that really sort of appreciates what we have, right? I think we have, we're less, depending on where you are in the city, we're a city that's less than 30 minutes from both downtown Seattle and the airport. We're have a major transportation corridor where we connect to a lot of different things. We have a lot of beautiful green spaces we've preserved. We have a lot of, I think we just have a lot to offer, and I would like to see someone that actually sees and appreciates the value of what we have, and I'd like to see someone that recognizes that, and Newcastle's not too small for them, but they're also willing to look bigger for support, right? We were able to receive grants recently from the county, money from the legislature, and not being too sort of insular to go after those things and build those relationships and try to advocate for our city, because I think our city is sort of it's the story of our city is sort of a smaller entity that's connected to so many other things, right? I think so many of our residents, because of where we're located, work for Boeing, work for T-Mobile, work for Microsoft, work for Amazon with their new headquarters in Bellevue, and so many people drive through our city too. So I think we're just, and we have a lot of Seahawks. There's so many things. I think we're intrinsically connected to so much outside of our community as well. So recognizing that, appreciating what we have, being willing to look big, being willing to grow and be pragmatic in growth of what is the best approach here, what can we realistically do, being able to be stern if we need to with certain items, whether it's housing or things of that nature. And obviously I think managing teams and managing folks is really well. I want all of our directors, I want all of our employees to feel like they're coming into a good work environment, would want to come into work and feel like they can trust the person who is above them. I know that those are some sort of pretty general ideas, but that is sort of what I'm looking for at this stage. We'll get more into the minutiae, sir.
And if you would also like to email me, I would love to see those. I think we chatted briefly about you emailing those also, if you have a moment.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Sherlock.
Thank you. Yeah, I think I would agree with everything that's been said so far, but would add just someone that's very collaborative. I think not only with council and staff, but our communities, very involved as well. And so I'd love to just bring someone on that's really willing to have a lot of conversations with everybody that's involved in the community, to really get more engagement, because I think I know we've all kind of missed that throughout the pandemic, but I think we needed that even before the pandemic too. We need to hear and have opportunities to hear more from the community and talk together and collaborate.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other comments? Go ahead,
Yeah.
Councilmember Lacotia.
Yeah, I'll think more and email you, but then somebody who has a very, very strong understanding of finance and who knows that balancing the budget means revenue expenses should not exceed the revenue. And I want to see some examples in the past, the cities that he's worked in and what kind of budget he has run, he or she. And I would like to see some examples around that how many years the person was able to balance the budget.
Okay. Thank you.
Go ahead, Councilmember Villasenor.
Thank you. Aside from the technical aspects of the job, just being able to recruit and develop a staff, I think is extremely important, because we are a contract city. We are very much tasked with having an organization that, from an employment standpoint, flourishes. Where people are attracted, they have the ability to do their best work. They have the ability to advance and grow. I mean, these are important parts of having an effective organization, and that's it's really important to me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, I have a list as well. So I think somebody who's very diplomatic in their dealings with all aspects of those he or she comes into contact with. With staff, community, definitely a people person, because this job, I feel, has got to be the warm fuzzy on occasion, but it's also got to be able to toe that hard line in a diplomatic fashion. I would be looking for somebody who's cutting edge and no longer entrapped in the box, but thinking outside of it and being creative and building those partnerships. Are there, whether it be within the region or within the city or with our businesses, our chamber, our volunteer groups, being very supportive and building those partnerships with those individuals. I agree with Councilmember Villasenor about being able to hire, excellent, qualified people and provide staff development for them, and also mechanisms to retain them. So I think those are really important qualities that I would be looking for in applicants.
Okay. So, what I think I heard, I didn't catch them all, but I'll see how I do here. And this will, of course, see how well I can read my writing after 5 minutes. But what I heard was prior experience is very important in being a city manager, at least or having city administrative experience, and I'm interpreting a little bit of your comment there. A good facilitator, a good communicator, and that was hit on a couple of different points and through the conversation here. A rising star, perhaps. We had good success with Rob, who came in as a community development director, and then sat in the big chair and did well. Someone who appreciates Newcastle for Newcastle, for all of the quality of life reasons why you all choose to live here and perhaps work here, because of its location, its connections, all the points that you made that I didn't all get down, but I understood, I think. Grant experience, be aggressive, be able to work with the state and granting agencies that had some experience in writing grants and going after grants. Be an advocate for the city. Be out there pushing and representing the city well, and that may be in a couple of different areas. I like this one, it's pragmatic growth. I mean, growth will happen. We're all mandated to grow to a certain degree under growth management, but how that growth occurs is really important to maintain the quality of life. And again, I'm interpreting a little bit on who made the comment on pragmatic growth, but I like the comment. This person should be positive, should be able to build trust. And there was another comment here that I can't read. I think it says good manager, but I'm not sure what that means. Collaborative, okay, working with staff, working with the community. Engagement is another term I heard I liked. Strong financial expertise and budget expertise. We are mandated by this little thing called state law to have a balanced budget. And, that was your point. Well, all of us who've been in city management understand that intrinsically. We can't print money, and it's a little frustrating. But staff development, you are a contract community here, but nonetheless, the staff you have are very, very important. And we want to retain good staff, we want to recruit staff, and we want to make sure they have a chance to grow and to continue to be productive. This person has to be diplomatic, but can also make the hard decisions. I think that was your point. Friendly, outgoing, diplomatic, can hear a variety of contrary viewpoints, but in the end, you still have to make a decision and move forward. Somewhat cutting edge occasionally, be thinking out of that box, be thinking entrepreneurially, but also all about partnerships too. So I know I didn't catch every point, but I think I got the majority of them. Did I miss anything of really importance you want to add?
You captured a good good portion of them. If anybody has anything to add for Mr. Prothman, if you could please email him by midday Thursday so he can accomplish what he needs to accomplish to move our process along, that would be terrific.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Is there any final questions for me before I move on?
Well, I'm still
It's
in
all right
denial.
that you didn't call me back. It's okay. I won't hold that against you.
I can tell this will be an ongoing conversation throughout the course of this recruitment.
Permission granted by Councilmember Griffin.
I expect that you will find somebody that is qualified, and that I hope you remember that we are a small city, 4.5 square miles, and we don't have a lot of underlying industry, which presents a real problem for us, and that we've got big city ideas, but small city funds.
Well, if it's any consolation to you, in my time as a city manager, I was city manager in Des Moines, just across the way over here, and which was also a residential community with very, very little commercial income stream. So I understand exactly what you just said. Maybe a little larger in population, but the same restrictions. So, all right. Thank you for your opportunity to talk to you tonight. I really appreciate it.
Thanks so much. All right, that brings us to item number 11.3, discussion on the American Rescue Plan Act funding priorities. I believe we have Mr. Toller with us, Director Bronze.
We are here. Hi, how are you all?
Welcome back.
Welcome. Thank you. Can you see and hear me okay?
We can, there we go. Now we can see you and Sydney. Okay.
Okay, great. Great. And again, I'm joined tonight by Sydney Bannister, who's you met last time. And we had the wonderful opportunity to be able to share with you kind of what we heard from the community in terms of community engagement, as well as then some different options. And so what we wanted to share with you tonight is kind of the outcome of some of that, as well as the fact that over the last 2 weeks, we've engaged you again in terms of getting your perspectives on the different options that were shared with you. So I'm going to go ahead and share the slide deck that was shared with you, I think earlier, perhaps today. I know we had sent it late last week to the city. So again, just could somebody say that they're able to see this okay?
Yes.
You're good.
Okay, good. Great. Okay, great. Thanks. So what we'd like to do tonight is just to, kind of review the prior decisions that you all had made with respect to the ARPA funds, summarize the identified options, and really get the results of your input that you did with us over the last last week in terms of your favorability of different options and the various priorities, and then the various next steps. So just so by way of reminder, we shared this slide the last time we got together. There was $3.4 million of one-time revenues that came from the American Rescue Plan Act. Your prior decisions had already identified about $1 million, just over $1 million of use, and so the amount that we were talking about was $2.4 million in uncommitted one-time funds. And so this slide summarizes the ideas, the options that were discussed based on the input that we got from the community, as well as a couple of ideas that you all had provided during our session with you 2 weeks ago. There were 18 options that were identified, and we just try to categorize them into 4 different, categories or buckets, if you will, that you see on the screen. And we had some discussion at the last meeting about the various options, but there was no direct consensus or direction that was provided. And so as we try to decide, okay, how can we try to coalesce all these different options into perhaps winnowing some of them down? We recommended to staff that we be allowed to engage with you directly through the use of an online survey tool to be able to kind of get your ideas with respect to your opinions on the different items that were there. And so that's what we've done. And I'm going to turn over to Sydney now to kind of walk through what we heard from you. For those of you that were able to respond to that. And then we'll come back and have a discussion then about how do we move forward in identifying what the potential options are for the use of these monies. So, Sydney, go ahead.
Thanks, Steve. All right, so we are going to shift right into the survey results, and this slide provides the questions that we posed to council. So just a brief overview and reminder of those, and just to let you know, we received 6 of the 7 council member responses, so that gave us a good idea of kind of how the council is feeling. So for these questions, the first one being, we asked council to indicate their level of favorability towards the 18 different investment options that Steve just showed on the previous slide of those 4 categories. And you'll see that in the next few slides. And so then we had y'all rank those from favorable, somewhat unfavorable, and then unfavorable. So you'll see that in the next slide. And then the second question we asked was, out of those 18 options, if you could only choose 5, what would those 5 be, and how would you rank them in priority order? So we'll get into that in a few slides. And then the last question being, how would you allocate the $2.4 million of the ARPA funds across the 4 categories? So we'll get into greater detail in a few slides here, but I think we can go to the next one, Steve. So this might be a little overwhelming at first, but that's okay. We're going to break it down together. So this is the favorability question. So this has all of those 18 investment options that we just talked about. It's not broken out into categories here. We will do that in the next 2 slides. So here it just lists the options. And a quick overview, red means unfavorable, peach, somewhat unfavorable, the blue color, somewhat favorable, and then green, favorable. And we list those top to bottom in order of favorability. So the most favorable are at the top, going down to unfavorable. And so this shows those responses, and it's interesting to note that each of the 4 categories that Steve covered on the previous slide a few back had 1 or more items that 4 or more council members indicated as favorable. So you can kind of see that at the top here that there's some strong favorability for these top 4 options, top 4 or 5, and we'll go into that in greater detail in the next slide. And we want to note that there were a number of options here that are not in that blue box primarily that had council members indicating unfavorability. And so our recommendation would be that those that received a number of council members, typically 3 or 4, be eliminated from consideration here. And obviously that is up to you. That's just our observation that there was a strong indication that these were not agreed upon as being the ideal choices for the city of Newcastle. So I think we could go to the next slide, unless you have anything, Steve. All right, so this slide is going back to that top priorities. So we asked the council to identify what their top 5 priorities would be out of those 18 options. And so as is noted on the slide here, this is listed by the number of council members that indicated that they were in favor of a particular priority. And so we color coded it as such. So thinking of that previous slide, if 4 or more council members indicated that a particular option was favorable, that is in green. If 3 indicated it was favorable, that is orange, and then 2 or less, that is red. And so while this particular question focused on priority arrangement, we wanted to tie it back to that previous question regarding favorability. And so the items that kind of stick out here, as you can probably see with the green coloring, 4 or more council members agreed that small business technical assistance was a top 5 priority, followed by economic development marketing and support for senior and youth programs that had 3 council members, and then city facilities repair and maintenance had 2. And so also interesting to note, only 1 out of the 6 respondents had the downtown improvements in their top 5, yet that did find favorability in the previous question, meaning that in the previous question, 4 or more council members indicated that it was favorable. So that's just an interesting note here. And then you can see that on the orange responses are those that were on the cusp, and then red had less favorability and overall less, a lower number of council members agreeing that this was a top priority. So I think we can go to the next slide. So the beginning of the slide is the same as the previous slide. We have it in the sense that we have it color coded. So again, orange meaning that 3 council members indicated that this was favorable, red 2 or less, and then green 4 or more council members. And so what we did on this slide was we dive into the allocation question that we asked. So out of that 2.4 million, how would council members allocate those dollars? And we asked council how they would do that on a percentage basis. And then we utilized the average. So we took the 4 categories that Steve mentioned previously and that we've kind of talked about in the past few slides. And then we painted which of the items were favorable, as you can see via the color coding. And so below these 4 categories, we have listed, and the way that this is listed when it says councilperson A to F, that's just listing it in the terms of the order that the surveys came in. So this is not to say that any council member is a particular letter. It just goes solely off of the basis of which it came in. So there is anonymity there. And we are not trying to attribute any allocation to any one council member. So this is just for generalization purposes. But these are the responses that we received. And so as you can see, for each of the categories, we have designated based on a percent how much a council member would allocate to that particular category. And so we're not recommending that you allocate these one-time funds in accordance with the numbers that you see on the screen. Particularly, in a moment, we'll show you the dollar amounts. But this is merely just to give you an idea of the percentages that council would allocate based on how they responded in the survey. And so we came up with a dollar amount based on the average percentage of the council members' responses. So as you can see, for direct financial assistance, the average percent that council members would allocate was around 11%, and that was rounded. It was around 11%, and so that would come out to about $240,000. And so we did that across the 4 categories so that we could just give a ballpark amount of how much maybe could be allocated. And again, we're not recommending these are the actual dollar amounts. We just wanted to give a visualization of how much this could be or would look like. And again, ultimately, the decision of how this money is allocated and where it goes is completely up to the council. But this is a helpful visualization of how much money might be allocated or how people might put money towards the different 4 categories. And so, Steve, I don't know if you have any more you want to add to this slide, but I will toss it back to you.
Yeah, thanks, Sydney. I just want to share, I guess, as we wrap this up, and then we'll toss it back and we'll remove this so that we can just have dialogue together. But I think what would be helpful is to get your direction tonight on, which individual options should be included in the final spending plan, or at least winnow the list down, and let's try to get to some type of conclusion about what items could we at least get rid of, so that way we can make a step forward in terms of helping you develop this plan. Or perhaps tonight you can decide amongst yourselves about how you want to put these funds to use in the community, and how would you allocate that in terms of dollars, or to at least get some direction from you to be able to help coalesce that together, to come back at your next meeting and bring forward a plan. We'll then have to go work with staff to just identify what the potential cost amounts are. For example, let me just big broad brushstroke example here. You have $2.4 million. If somehow it was decided to invest all of that into the businesses, I mean, you could end up having these huge amounts of money that would be given to a business, and would that really, be helpful in the grand scheme of things in terms of other priorities that you might have, as well as, $200,000 to roadway improvements would not go very far at all. So there needs to be some understanding about what the cost amounts are, the potential impacts that those cost amounts might have with each of the selected options. And so we're going to help in terms of identifying what those dollar amounts will be or could be, but maybe we'll hear some of that from you tonight as we talk through that. But ultimately, I will be with you again on May 3rd, and I'm a little jealous of Greg Prothman being able to be there directly with you. I'm hopeful that maybe we might have an opportunity to do that in the near future here. But I think that it's helpful to then at that next meeting is really to coalesce us and come up with some final conclusions in terms of how to put this money to best use. So that's what we wanted to share with you tonight, and we would be happy to answer any questions that you have about the work that we've done. But really, as I stop share so I can come back and talk with you, is to really hear from you in terms of, what are your thoughts in terms of the different options that are there, and how would you go about wanting to move forward with putting this together in a plan? So with that, Madam Mayor, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Stephen Sidney. All right, council members, any comments about the statistics you saw? Councilmember Clark, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I do have some comments, but first I have a question for Steve, and I actually called Steve today because when I saw there was only 6 respondents, I was thinking, I hope mine got through, because I did get a message saying your survey was completed. So I would hazard a guess that we all think we submitted a survey. So I'm a little concerned that when maybe you didn't see 7 surveys come in, that why was not a one person given a kick in the pants about, hey, where's your survey? It would have been really helpful to have that extra set of data. It would certainly change some of the results here. I was just curious about, why would there not follow up to, I assume everybody thought they submitted it, but somebody came up short. What's your thoughts on that?
We sent out reminders to everyone, and I'll defer to council. The person that didn't respond to it, does council want to identify that, or do you want me to just go ahead and indicate who it was?
I don't need to know a name myself, but I just as a, what a follow-up, because like I said, I called you, I was going to make sure mine got in, but I just think that perhaps something this important, another, hey, so-and-so, you didn't do it, you got 5 minutes, get going, or something like that.
Yeah. I will say we only received 6 responses, and did everyone fill out the response? I can't see you right now, but
I know I did.
Yeah, everybody's nodding their head, so yeah, I don't know what to tell you.
Councilmember Griffin, did you want to say something?
I believe I filled it out twice, but maybe I didn't do it properly, if I'm the one that's missing.
I will say that we didn't see a response from you. And so something must have happened in terms of the submit button or whatever.
I filled it out and wasn't sure it went through.
The audio broke up, I'm sorry.
I said I attempted to fill it out twice and wasn't sure whether or not it went through.
Okay.
I get a confirmation that it did.
All right. Well, and perhaps Councilmember Griffin's responses as you go through the different options could be identified based on what he would have said or what he did say with respect to those responses.
My main options were sustainability and infrastructure on the SWIM program.
Good. Okay.
Thank you.
Any comments or questions from anyone else?
Well, I'll continue with a few comments then, if that's okay. So, we have a wide variety of choices here, and kind of what I would have expected to see, and I appreciate that you put the dollar amounts to that. That's very helpful to see that. Just the other day, my wife and I got our tax bill, right, and I almost fell over, right? Normal year would go up a couple $100 or maybe even less, and this year it was just astronomical. And I know we're not the only citizens in Newcastle that are just suffering sticker shock right now. The inflation is out of control, and it's pretty hard on some people on fixed income around the city. And one of the things that came up at the last meeting that I hadn't really thought about until Councilmember Griffin mentioned it is he asked Steve, he said, well, you know, didn't we have a previous financial sustainability plan? And Steve said, yeah, and if we don't do anything, quote, the reserves will be depleted in the general fund. So since I filled this out, or since that meeting and the time I filled this out, my thoughts kind of switched a little bit, that we really need to sit on this money and wait and see how this next budget cycle is going to come through, because there's so many outside influences on our community. You know, the inflation, you know, we're going to have a recession again, right? That's my personal opinion. I don't think I'm wrong. And we need to be prepared with reserves. One of the things that we did last week, Councilmember Griffin mentioned it, but in combination, the two of us together, or three of us together, Council Members Lacotia, Griffin, and I went all over Newcastle and talked to every business. Now, we didn't hit everybody. Some were closed, and we didn't go to the banks and grocery stores. I mean, we're not going to give them money, right? But the main theme that we heard was, hey, everything's going back to normal now. We're doing good, right? And if I asked every business, we asked some, but if we asked every business, you know, did you fill out the PPE loans? Most of them said, yes, we did. We did it twice. Like Councilmember Griffin said, one guy decided, I don't really need it, so I'm not going to apply for it, which is pretty morally upright. But the theme was, you know, I don't see a dire need for our businesses. Would everybody love to have money? Sure, right? Nobody's going to say no, right? I mean, I wouldn't say no. So do we really need to give a lot of this money to businesses? You know, I think no. I think we need to sit on this money and wait to see what our budget cycle is going to do. This inflation is going to cause major problems, and we just need to have that in reserve. That's my vote. I understand we're probably not going to all agree on that, but I am very convinced that we need to wait and see. We have 2 years to spend this money, and we need to know what's coming first. So thank you. That's my comments.
Councilmember Villasenor, go ahead.
Thank you. First, I would be interested in having Councilmember Griffin's input put into the presentation we compiled, if that's doable, and then we can get an updated version maybe later in the week. I mean, because I think having a more complete picture of our opinions is important in this discussion. You know, even though Councilmember Griffin was kind enough to give us his perspectives, I think that having it in the tool gives it a little more, allows us to just look at it in a more complete way. I do agree with Ms. Bannister's suggestion that we take everything that has like a red, you know, that shows as red in the as non-favorable, that we just set it aside for now. I will disagree with Councilmember Clark regarding. I know it's great that you went out to the businesses, and that's, you know, it's commendable. You know, I think it's great to get out and talk to them. But we do have a process that we use with the CARES Act, that we work through the Chamber of Commerce. I think it would be a more complete process if we allowed those business owners to step forward in a process and ask for help. I know that City Manager Wyman last meeting made it mentioned that there were some businesses that were teetering at this point. He didn't mention them. I'm not sure a business that was teetering would would admit to such a thing. So to give them a process by which they can get they can state their case and say, we do need some assistance to take one step forward and allow us to get on stable footing so that we can be successful in the long term, helps our community. I mean, we don't have a lot of businesses, and so to lose any of them tends to be a bit of a black eye on the community. You go by storefronts and they're shuttered. It just doesn't, any single, missing business, feels like it affects our community in more of an outsized way. So,
Thank you. Councilmember Lacotia, go ahead, please.
Yeah, so inflation is 8.5%. It just continues to grow. Last time when I spoke, it was 7%. I think it was less than a month. Just continuing on Steve, I'm a little disappointed with your study regarding the businesses. I saw that you only went to 4 businesses, and those 4 were Newcastle Library, Newcastle Historic Society, Verde, and YMCA. The last I know, Newcastle Library is managed by King County Library System. And based on these 4, you came up with a recommendation on what the businesses, what we should be doing for the businesses. I like to base my decision more on facts. And as both the council member Clark and Griffin mentioned, all 3 of us went out. We went out to a variety of businesses, and we interviewed 15. For all the people out there, we interviewed 15 businesses of all varieties. We met with restaurants, we met with beauty spa, we met with vision, dental, meat shop, fruit stand, the ice cream place, Blazing Onion, sushi, Rokuchon, Rujuve Med Spa, like 15 of these businesses we met with the owners. And we spoke to them. We asked them, how things are going. They were like, all of them mentioned they applied for PPP loans. And Steve, I know I asked you, your question didn't even have any of that. You didn't even ask with how much, they got from the CARES Fund or nothing about their financial status. Because the questions that you shared with me, that you asked the businesses, there was nothing about what is the financial condition of these businesses. They all said they all applied for PPP loans. They were very thankful for city to, help them out. Business has picked up. You know what was their biggest complaint? Labor. They were talking about they have labor shortages. That means they have the money, they have cash flow coming in, they have money to pay for the labor, but they cannot find labor. This is a universal problem all over US. It's not just Newcastle, it's all over US. Restaurants cannot find people to work for them. So that was the main thing that they came out with. So I remember, Steve, when we spoke one-on-one, I asked you, did you talk to any business which said that they're in dire need and that they will close down tomorrow if they don't get the money? You said no, you didn't come across any. Of course, when you talk to Newcastle Library and Historic Society and, YMCA is doing great. People are back because they all run on monthly fees. They run on membership fees. So you said none of them had that situation. When it comes to Newcastle City, yes, we are in a dire need. We are depleting our reserves. We are soon going to go bankrupt. We are just making a case. We are unnecessary spending and trying to make a case for new taxes. That's what I feel. So I like to base my decisions on facts and not emotions. And yes, if there is a process to go and connect with the businesses, I would like to see their financial estimate, their cash flow, and I would like to see that application. I would like to estimate that. I would like to evaluate that, and then make a decision on whether we should be helping them out. I'm all for businesses. I want to help them out. But do they really need help? They need help with labor. Can we provide them that? That is what they are asking for. 15 businesses is what I have. That's the data I have versus 4 businesses. No, 2 businesses and 2 nonprofits. And I would not want to base my decision on that. And the fact today is that yes, we are depleting our reserves and Newcastle needs that money. So let's not rush on making a decision. Let's wait on it. We don't need to spend this money tomorrow. Let's just wait and see how things are before we jump onto these things. So yeah, I mean, those are the things. And I would like to see more analysis from you, Steve. If you can bring me more analysis, and if you are going out to the businesses, and if you're going to, I don't know who's going to review the application, but I would like to see it before we give any. I would like to see all the fundings, all their cash flows, how things are. So thank you.
Anyone else?
Madam Mayor, if I might, I just want to, Councilmember Lakosha, I agree with you. I was disappointed that we only got 4 businesses to respond to our invitation to meet with them. Well, I think we reached out to 12. We had 8
Steve,
that
you
said, yes,
should have taken me along
with
with you.
you.
You should have taken me along with you. I could have gotten you more businesses. Next time when you go out, call me. We'll go together.
Yeah, That'd be great. And I also want to remind council that we did do a survey and we ended up getting 54 businesses to respond to that. And that was one of the questions that we did ask them was, you know, what types of financial assistance have you already received? That was part of some of the things that we had, I think, shared at our last council meeting. So I just wanted to share that. I agree with you. I was hopeful to be able to get more responses from the business community. We only ended up getting 4 that ended up scheduling a time with us. So.
Thank you, Mr. Toller. Any other comments? Councilmember Charbonneau, go ahead, please. Other button, maybe? There you go.
Ah, there we go.
You're live.
There we go. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor. So, I do want to start, thank you, Steve and Sydney, for sort of surveying us here. I do want to call out, though, sort of the statistics nerd in me. I think we have a lot of different visuals that I think people can very easily tether themselves to with only 6 respondents. And I don't think that's the best representation, and that's not what I would actually like to see presented to us moving forward, of a ton of different visuals for such a small amount of respondents. I think it's, misleading is not the right word, but I don't think it's what's appropriate for sort of the survey that's being put out, especially with the idea of, tethering certain financial amounts to different percentages. I don't think that's the best approach personally. I think I'd rather just look at what was the general support behind an idea, and sort of in these sort of 4 different buckets we've looked at, as opposed to all these different visuals that really don't hold a lot of statistical weight and value. So I caution folks on that, and I would ask that, I think it's a helpful visual model, but I don't want us to be really strongly tethered to that. I think I do feel something I want to draw people back to as well is that something that was talked about not in this presentation but a previous presentation from management partners was there's a very strong desire from both the community and also from the council members that you want to see these funds, like you want to feel the effect of these funds. You want to be able to see where they went. You want to be able to feel that impact. And I think that's really important, right? I think I'm quoting Steve here, so if I'm wrong, it's his fault. But we haven't seen, local municipalities haven't seen this much money at the federal level since the Carter administration. So I'm 25. I could serve 50 years on Newcastle Council, and I probably might not get this amount of money again. So thinking creatively, I think, is really critical. I also want to caution, I think the data that was put forward was not proportional either, right, when we're looking at different buckets. If we're going to invest in infrastructure, the amount of money that needs to go into infrastructure is a lot larger than for some of these other initiatives. Infrastructure and small business technical assistance are not equally weighted things, but they're presented as, one bullet point on the same bucket. I think that consideration is really important. Personally, keeping this idea in mind of we want to see a tangible use of the funds, we want to be creative. I don't really have sort of a huge interest in being a sort of jack of all trades with this money. I think we did a really good job with the money that we already spent, and I want to highlight there is, $1 million already spent on covering the needs we need to cover, helping some of those businesses with direct financial assistance. And I think now is our time to be creative. The city of Shoreline put all of their money into one project. I was talking with the mayor of Mount Vernon, and she quite literally got a giant electric vehicle charging parking complex built because of where they're situated. They can get truckers to stop, and that's their economic development initiative. That is how I feel about that, and I want to sort of beat this drum for economic development. And I feel the pressure to do this as someone that is younger and trying to sort of plan long term. I think everyone up here wants fiscal sustainability, and this isn't as a direct means of fiscal sustainability, but it really is a means of fiscal sustainability, if you'll bear with me. I think we don't have many buckets to generate revenue from as a city. One of them is our sales tax. If we talk about diversifying our revenue, but if we can, instead of diversifying our revenue, if we can sort of deepen one of those buckets, it's going to benefit us in the long run. I don't think anyone up here likes to see empty storefronts. I don't think anyone up here likes to, see those businesses empty, quite frankly, and knowing that we do need to develop more revenue long term. I think one of the best ways we can do that long term is looking at this economic development initiative and taking it seriously. If we get more people to stop here, we need to leverage what we have and not be too big for our britches. We are a major transportation corridor. I know I say it a lot. People drive through us to get to Microsoft campus in Redmond. People drive up, there's another second Amazon campus being built in Bellevue. People drive down south through us to go to the Boeing campus in Redmond. We need to get them to stop here. We need to get them to spend money here because that will help us overall address some of these issues that we all are feeling, right? So looking at the, spoiler alert, I was the one who put downtown improvements promoting tourism as my top one. I think that's critical. Talking about electric charging stations, talking about sort of that small business technical assistance, and not saying it needs to 100% go into the economic development front, but I think it is really critical. Let's expand, let's deepen that bucket. It's a means of fiscal sustainability. It's a means of addressing that, and I think I just can't say that enough, and I really want to emphasize that to folks. So I would love to see a big investment in economic development. I think it's a good investment for our future. That's what I personally would like to be the drum for. There are some other buckets we can absolutely address certain percentages to, but I do think that is critical.
All right, thank you. Any further? Oh, Councilmember Griffin, go ahead, please.
Steve, you were here 3 years ago when you put together an expensive program for sustainability. Only one of the council that is here tonight was on council at that time. The rest of us were not. And so what we tried to do is we tried to work with that. We never could, as a council before us and after us, we could never do anything other than go for a utilities tax, which failed. That was the only thing that we were able to do out of the study that you provided. And now I would think that you would say, boy, we got an opportunity to use these funds to help with the sustainability, to help us out in that direction instead of looking at a lot of other different areas as to where to put the money. It would make sense, it would seem like, that here we are with opportunity to set up some kind of sustainability, at least have the money for next year's budget and the year after, and we wouldn't have to spend a lot of time trying to figure out how to divide it up and spend it here and there. So what would that look like to you?
Well, I would say that you could just maintain the revenues that you got for ARPA in the general fund. It's one of the recommendations we had in terms of the revenue loss category. You could leave them in the general fund. They would be a one-time recovery of your reserves. But if something is not done to deal with the structural gap, those reserves will ultimately bleed down. And I believe the bleed rate was about $800,000 or $1 million a year, roughly, somewhere in that range. So, $2.4 million, which is left, you'll go through that in 2 years if you don't. But it does buy you more time to identify the additional budget strategies that you need to be able to solve that gap. So whether that is, again, expenditure reductions, changes in delivery of service opportunities that make it more cost effective, or revenue enhancements, which could also include increasing the base of sales tax production, like Councilmember Charbonneau is indicating as well. So I hope that. Well, that's just my reflection on what you had indicated, Councilmember Griffin.
Up to tonight, we have used $908,000 of that money for this year. We put it on this year's budget to balance the budget, and we claimed we had a balanced budget. I didn't agree with it, but because it's one-time money, it's not money that comes in every year.
That's correct. It's just filling in a gap temporarily.
Right.
Anyone else? Deputy Mayor Sherlock, go ahead, please.
Yeah, thank you. So in hearing that whole discussion, I would bring it back to Councilmember Charbonneau's points of the economic development, what are the other terms here? The small business technical assistance, the downtown improvement, promoting tourism, all that stuff speaks to me as more pointing towards fiscal sustainability, or it's helping with that at least. It's not solving the entire problem, of course, but that is interesting to me in that it really is. I'm kind of a compromiser, and to me, in my mind, that brings together community, but also is working towards more financial stability. So that's where my mind is, where I'm drawn to. I would, looking at the, let's see, slide number 6, where there's kind of a box around the top few items. I think you were talking about maybe under that box would be kind of the ones that are the red items. Is that correct? Okay.
Correct. That's where you have 4 or more members that indicated those items were unfavorable.
Yeah. So I also wanted to say, sorry, I lost this, but I want to agree that I would also like to see Councilmember Griffin's answers put in this. So that may change things a little bit. But once that's done, I would be in favor of getting rid of the lower ones, although I would be hesitant to completely have that be the real red line. That it's a blue line actually, but that blocks, because I'm really excited to bring this to the town hall in June, kind of what all these discussions that we've had and where we're at. And it'd be interesting to me just leaving maybe the last little 2 that remained just to discuss further with the greater community. I don't know if anyone else would be in favor of that, but that's where I'm at.
Okay, I haven't shared my thoughts on this yet, so I will go ahead and do so. I appreciate everyone's response. I'm sorry that Councilmember Griffin's response was not included. I feel like we have a golden opportunity here right now to use some of the ARPA-related allocation to partner with a $500,000 grant for Lake Boren Park improvements. Having started working on that plan and developing it when I was a member of the Community Activities Commission, and having the absolute pleasure of approving it as a council member, I've always been committed to not throw that plan on a shelf and let it collect dust. I see Councilmember Simpson out in the audience, and she definitely recalls that period of time when we reviewed that plan, and many reviews of that plan. $500,000 is a big chunk of change. We have a very talented public works director. We have a very talented parks planner who can execute on those grants, and additional funding we would like to dedicate to our open spaces, which have always been highly commended in our community surveys. They're a great source of recreation, including could be further adapted to accommodate senior and youth programs like we have, heavily supported on the top line here. I also know that our annex building is in really needs some TLC. It is a very old building. It has, elevators that have mechanical problems and carpet that is very old. And if you all recall, I believe it was January when we sadly lost a maintenance worker on duty. And I remember talking with folks about that building and all the repair it really needed. I think that should be, repairing, and some upgrades in that building are more than needed. I also don't want to live in a ghost town. I don't want to drive through downtown and see empty storefronts. I don't want to lose our a big core of our city, you know, are the business community. I feel like the Chamber of Commerce is really coming up to speed from when I first started on council. I think they've done a lot of great work and under some great leaders. And I feel like we have some great opportunities here to preserve our business, to even grow them and get them the assistance they need to hire staff, to, you know, do some maintenance if they need to work with their landlords on maybe creating some outdoor spaces that are more regular and of course more up to code, so we're not revising our code all the time to accommodate. But I just see some really good opportunities here to make Newcastle thrive. I've seen some great things that has been done with rescue relief money from this pandemic, and my all-time favorite has got to be what downtown Walla Walla did for their business community, and I think we have a great opportunity to do something equally as great. I also want to point out, going back to the parks a little bit, for as long as I've been on council, and probably even when I was on the commission, there's been a lot of talk and hope that we could develop a historic park. And I just want to remind folks that at our May 3rd meeting, the By My House Historic Park is coming back to council. And that's a big opportunity, and that is a great way to invest some of these funds. If we could, you know, work with the developer and make sure we land on an agreement that gives us a tourist, you know, destination that tells our story. The Historical Society has gotten off to a great start with the historic monument signs throughout the city. I think, you know, maybe some community group grant could definitely grow that program and increase what they do. I feel like that's where we really need to, it's some low-hanging fruit that will bring awareness to what our body has done to improve our community. You know, I'd really like to see focuses in those areas. Any further comments? Any motions? Oh, I'm sorry, Councilmember Clark, just saw the light come on.
Yeah, slow on that. Thank you, Mayor. So we obviously need a next step from Steve and Sydney, right? Because I don't think we'll ever, by talking, come to a consensus on everything. So I suggest, not as a motion, but just suggest that we ask management partners to get Councilmember Griffin's input. And then after they do that, on slide 7, there was a, under top priorities, the last bucket or box on there where nobody voted for those items, whatever's left, and that be eliminated, right? Let's start to narrow it down. And, you know, we can get more focus, perhaps. And I would say that, you know, I don't feel a need to rush to this. And I like Deputy Mayor Sherlock's idea of bringing this to this town hall. If we can narrow it down a little bit more with all 7 of our inputs on there, that would be my suggestion. I don't know if that's a motion or not, but I think it's important that, and Councilmember Charbonneau was exactly right. We have 6 data points. We'll have 7, but let's get some more. I mean, we talk to businesses, like I said, we have some more than that, but, you know, we have a whole community, and we can maybe make it very clear that the City Hall will focus on this as a major topic, and maybe that will bring people out. It's their choice to come out or not, obviously. So that's where I'm at.
Okay. Oh, Director Palmer, go ahead.
I'd like to say a few things. I want to thank management partners, first of all. They have the background of, as Councilmember Griffin mentioned, our fiscal sustainability plan. I'd like to put that in a little bit perspective because I've heard all of you talk about it. And, and I want to talk about how the next year's budget will probably shape up like. Steve Toller was correct in that how it would dwindle, you could put it in the reserves and keep it in the general fund and it would slowly dissipate. We have still a revenue problem. We have three volatile revenues, three major revenues, two are volatile with the sales tax and the development revenue. But for 2023, our director, Austin Thorpe, has projected that we would get about $1.8 million in development revenue. We have to spend this 2.4 by 2024. And normally we get about 700,000 in the last 2 years in development revenue. So 2023 is shaping up to might be okay. So I want the council to kind of think about that when they figure out about fiscal sustainability, because 2023 might be okay moving forward. So, and this is one-time money. One thing that I appreciate Councilmember Charbonneau about was the reinvestment into the community with regards to sales tax, because that reinvestment will come back to us in the form of sales tax. So consider those your options too when you're evaluating the different criteria that Steve's come up with. And those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Any motions?
Point of clarification. I guess I would like to know from Steve what you would find, because I mean I like the idea very much of bringing this to sort of the town hall as well, but that is some time away. What are you looking for, right? Is it are you looking for tonight? Are you looking for elimination of some options that we kind of generally found unpopular? What would be helpful to you in your work in preparing this for us?
I think maybe the Councilmember Clark's point is that, the items that were on slide 7 that said no council members indicated that they were in the top 5 at all, and they were all by 4 or more of you indicated as unfavorable. And let me just say that Councilmember Griffin, I will directly contact you tomorrow to make sure that you're able to take that survey, and we'll incorporate yours into that, and we'll recast all of this and send it out through the city clerk to you all. But that said, if we could winnow out those items that were on slide 7, the community group grants, household grants, arts and culture, and the community food pantry, let's just eliminate those. And then if you went back to slide 6 in your packet, I'm happy to bring this up if it'd be helpful, but there were some other items that were also by 4 of you that were indicated. Let's wait until we get Councilmember Griffin's response on that, but it's not going to add more people saying it's favorable. 4 of you already said it was unfavorable. That will just, the rest of those items that are on that list, like city fleet and equipment, transportation improvements, fiscal sustainability initiatives, community group grants, those would also fall off the list as well. So anyways, those are my thoughts, Councilmember Charbonneau, in terms of at least winnowing down this list, and then coming back, and whether that be at the May 3rd meeting, or maybe we package something together in anticipation of the town hall meeting that you're going to be holding in June, to get the community's input at that meeting.
Oh, go ahead, Councilmember Charbonneau. I thought you were done. I apologize.
Sorry, I was processing. I'm moved to remove the following items from the ARPA funding priorities for direction for management partners that have been indicated by no council members as a priority in their top 5: community group grants, household grants, arts and culture, and community food pantry.
There's a second.
Second for me.
Okay, thank you. All right, it's been moved by Councilmember Charbonneau, seconded by Councilmember Clark, to remove the items listed in box number 5 of the survey results. community group grants, household grants, arts and culture, and community food pantry. Councilmember Charbonneau, would you like to speak to your motion, please?
Yeah, so I understand if there would be pushback to this. I think, we're going to get to a point where we need to start. We've had a lot of presentation on this. We're getting to a point where we need to start whittling some of these down. I think none of us putting this in their top 5 is telling. I think, giving some more direction to these folks that we're working with is important. And I would, like to start to narrow that focus a bit more. And that's why I'm doing this with the specific criteria of things folks put towards the bottom.
Councilmember Clark, anything to add?
No, nothing to add. I agree with him.
Okay. Any additional comments? Deputy Mayor Sherlock, go ahead, please.
So the only reason I hesitate on this is because there's 2 different slides that we're looking at, the favorability of options slide and the top priorities slide. And they're really different order. And so I don't know if Steve or Sydney could help us kind of think through that a little bit more, because I don't know if I feel comfortable eliminating by our top 5 priorities instead of, I kind of lean towards the other list because it's not just the top 5, it's taking in kind of somewhat favorable, somewhat unfavorable from all of us and recategorizing that way. Does that make sense? Are you understanding what I'm saying?
Yeah, I am. And the reason on Councilman Sherlock, on slide 6, the way that we rank those were ranked, and forgive me as I look away from the camera as I do this, those were ranked based on the number of unfavorable versus favorable. And so support senior and youth programs, 4 of you indicated that it was either 3 of you indicated favorable and a 4th said somewhat favorable. And there were only 2 that said they were some shade of unfavorability. And again, subject to getting Councilmember Griffin's responses on this, it appears that there's at least 4 of you that have indicated that you were favorable on those. And the same thing holds true for the other items that are on that, the small business technical assistance, economic development marketing, city facility repairs and maintenance, downtown improvements promoting tourism. 4 of you indicated that you were some degree of favorability on that. And I think that there's value in looking, okay, there was some, indication of favorability there. So that's why those would stay on the list. But those items where there was at the bottom of the list, which we've already talked about, the bottom 4, that would not be on the list. It's those items that are kind of in that middle ground there. Community group grants, fiscal sustainability initiatives. There were 4 of you that indicated unfavorable there. But, at least 1 or 2 of you on slide 7 had indicated that fiscal sustainability initiatives was something that was wanting to be on the list. So I think as you're winnowing down with the motion that's on the floor right now, that is helpful to winnow some of those items out. And then when you see Councilmember Griffin's response to these, it'll give you even more information in terms of what you might want to winnow out from the rest of that. And that's something we could do at the May 3rd meeting.
Okay, just a reminder, there is a motion on the floor. Councilmember Lacontia, did you have your hand up? Oh, okay, all right. Before I go for second rounds, I just wanted to comment on the motion. I'd be reluctant to favor it because I feel strongly that the community group grants need to be further considered. I felt it was very difficult to pull a top 5 because so many of them, to my perception of them, they were partners, like the small business technical and the business grant loans. I feel like there was a partner there, and they're very similar to where they could be considered as one bucket. So it, to me, there was similarities there that troubled me picking top five. But Councilmember Charbonneau, go ahead.
Yeah, no, thank you, Madam Mayor. I appreciate that. And I'm very open if, I was just doing this for the sake of trying to move business along. I'm very open if anyone has an amendment. I think, yeah, it is, I think, again, we're sort of really subject and at the mercy of the way this is kind of presented to us. Whereas, you know, it's certain items, right, where it's like, I strongly believe what Mayor Nguyen was talking about in terms of investing in our parks is also by proxy a economic development initiative because you get more people to stop in our city. So I think it's the stratification of these items is unequal. The amount of financial investment that would come from each bullet point and being involved in that is unequal. And then we're looking and trying to really scrutinize data from 6 people presented in like 3 or 4 different ways. So I feel like we're just fighting a losing battle here, quite honestly. And I am open to suggestions on what we should do to move forward. I was trying to suggest something to move forward for the sake of moving forward, but if we also need to, you know, sort of reassess this as well, I completely understand that.
I do have a motion on the floor, so I'll go ahead and bring it to a vote. The motion on the floor is to remove the items from consideration for the ARPA funds. They're in box number 5, community group grants, household grants, arts and culture, and community food pantry. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Nay. Motion carries 5-2 with Deputy Mayor Sherlock and Mayor Nguyen dissenting. Okay. Anything further? Oh,
Point of clarification, do we not do roll call votes? Okay.
anything further on this topic? Mr. Toller, Ms. Bannister?
No, I think we'll, Councilmember Griffin, I'll be in touch with you tomorrow. And for the rest of you, we'll respond back then with what the update is on that. We'll eliminate those items from the list. And I think that it may make sense then to come back on May 3rd and just to refine what we heard. I think it would be helpful.
I'll be looking for your contact.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Always nice to spend our Tuesday evening with you. All right, moving on. Item 11.4, action item, adoption of ordinance 2022-641, amending the 2022 budget by reclassifying some positions, adjusting salary ranges of some positions, and creating a new 0.6 FTE position of events and recreation coordinator, and providing an adjustment by fund in summary form for American Rescue Plan Act fund reporting and compliance requirements. Director Palmer, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. We're going to tag team this ordinance in 2 parts. One, I'm going to speak to the financial aspect of it, and then Sarah Jacobs is going to direct towards the salary survey schedule. Thank you. Anyway, so this ordinance that's before you, the part that's financial in relation is related to the resolution that's passed on April 5th with regards to the resolution that directed myself to bring forward and budget amendment that would be an agreement to that resolution, which what it does is it streamlines the reporting requirements by U.S. Treasury. And so this will be one piece of a part, second part, later ordinance, later in the year when we decide on the deliberations we had earlier this evening with Steve Toller and Management Partners. But this is the first part of it, and that part is the reporting part, and that's all this does. It moves the monies from cumulative reserve to the general fund, and then create my reporting requirement and meeting those as we outlined at the last council meeting.
Director Jacobs, I'll turn it over to you.
My part's a little bit longer, so sorry. As Director Palmer stated, we have a few adjustments we'd like to make to the 2022 salary schedule. And the first one of those is just following up from our collective bargaining agreement that we approved with Resolution 2022-895. And that would be to update our union public works employees and infrastructure maintenance manager and our 5 maintenance technicians. So we need to update their salary schedule. So that's the first change. Next, I would like to talk about our associate planner and our community development department. So position levels in the community development department often fluctuate depending on project volume. So over the years, we've had different numbers and titles ranging from planning technician, assistant, associate, and senior planners. Currently, the workload within the department is expanded beyond the scope of an associate planner work. Erin Fitzgibbons is our current associate planner, and she's been filling a void and is performing really far beyond associate planner level work. So her work in policy and code development and management of complex development projects are just a few examples of the senior level planning work that she is doing. And additionally, she's achieved her American Institute of Certified Planners, or commonly known as AICP certification. And so she would be a good fit to move into that senior planner role. So increasing the senior planner FTE count would allow the city to address the complex planning issues that the city is continuing to rise and devote needed resources to the upcoming major comp plan update. What we would like to do is reclassify the associate planner to senior planner and then unfund the associate planner. Any questions in regards to that request?
Any questions on those components? Look.
Yeah, I just have a question, sir.
Yeah.
So the senior planner, the associate planner becomes a senior planner, and then the associate planner gets unfunded, means it gets removed. We don't have that position anymore?
So it means that we do not fund the position. We keep it, so we have several positions in our salary schedule that are unfunded. We do not have those positions filled. If the need were to arise that we would go back to an associate planner, or in some instances, we have like the building official, I believe, unfunded, and a few other positions, the senior review engineer position that is unfunded. If there was ever a need that we would need to go back to those positions, we would come to the council and state the reasons why we needed to move to those positions and then how we plan on funding them.
Why not remove it? Because, you know, you already have 3 positions. Why keep that extra position unfunded? Why not just remove it? And in the future, if you need it, we can always like create a new position again, but then why leave it unfunded in the books?
Yeah, so we've actually done this before, and specifically, it really comes into planning. We've done it before several times, where it just depends on what the development needs are at the time, that we need to change and go back to either an associate planner, a senior planner, or an assistant planner.
Okay.
Any further questions? All right, Director Jacobs, go ahead and continue, please.
Okay, so since 1995, the city's employed an events and recreation coordinator in some variation. And in your packet, you probably noticed the table that provided all the FTE counts and the varying titles that we've had. And also, we contracted out a communications manager position. And at one time, we even had a full-time communications manager back when I first started here. In 2019, the community activities coordinator retired, and the city combined that full-time coordinator role with the communications position. But since we've done that, we've really noticed that by adding that position, those two positions together, it's too time consuming and not sustainable for one person to do the job. We know from the community survey that it was really important that people have events and communications. And, you know, we know with how fast everything moves in our society and all the communication that gets out there, that you need to have really concise and clear communication on a routine basis. And if you don't have a full-time communications person that's continually monitoring all the social platforms that are out there, misinformation can happen, and our events aren't getting announced, and special, you know, things for senior citizens and projects and, you know, collecting flags or whatever it might be that is important to our community, that information isn't going to get out in a timely manner. So what we would like to do is add the events and recreation coordinator position back into the city. That person would focus on events, recreation program management such as Skyhawks, youth and senior recreation activities, volunteer coordination, which just seems to get bigger and bigger as we go on, and then community activities, commission support, and homeowner association events. We've been trying to do that for a few years, and we can't keep up with what the community desires and what they want in our community. So by adding that 6-point FTE level, you could, you know, offer those things back into our community. I included ranges at a 0.6 FTE level and also at a full-time level, just so that you could see the difference of what that cost could be or options. Any questions regarding those two positions?
Councilmember Villasenor, go ahead, please.
Thank you. When we're talking about the 0.6, the intention is to hire someone to work 3 days a week, like to have or is it a one that is going to be 0.6 assigned to this particular role and then 0.4 assigned to another role?
No, 0.6
Okay.
for the events. Yes.
Okay,
Events
that's the
and
intention, is to
recreation.
hire a
Yes.
part-time employee or define.
Correct.
Thank you.
And it's my understanding that those hours would probably vary from time of year to.
Right, that's why you don't
Correct.
say 8 hours per day or what
Exactly.
have you, because during events, you're often working 12, 14-hour days.
Yep, definitely. Any further questions? Okay, I will let you.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, I'm happy to, I didn't see any further questions. I'm happy to entertain motions. Our Deputy Mayor Sherlock.
Thank you. I'm going to start out with a motion.
Okay, Madam Mayor, I'm sorry, I have one more question, apologize.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry, Sarah, I have one more question for you. On the motion as it's written, I understand you're probably talking about the union contract, but it says reclassifying some positions and adjusting salary ranges of some positions. The engineer in me kind of looks at that as an open check, right? I mean, now down the road, we could say, oh, the council passed an ordinance to change some positions, and here it is. And is that just specifically talking about the positions in the union contract?
So we are not reclassifying anything in the union contract. The resolution was just for the infrastructure maintenance manager and for the
Okay.
5 maintenance technicians and their new salary ranges.
So the some positions is talking about the planner position and the coordinator position.
Those are the reclasses, correct?
Thank you.
Madam Mayor. Can I just add to you? I just want to address something really quickly, City Clerk Paul White, for the council members' benefit. The title of the ordinance is not a replacement for the details of the ordinance. And in the sections of the ordinance, in the enactment clauses, it's very specific about which positions are being discussed.
I need to do public comment for the ordinance. No? resolution? Okay, okay, I just wanted to double check. Thank you. All right, Deputy Mayor Sherlock, I will turn it back. I'm sorry, were there more questions?
Are we being asked to add 2 positions to the,
No, you're,
though they might not be funded?
no, it's a .6.
Or it's just,
Events and
we're
Recreation
only being
Coordinator.
asked to add 1 position in?
It's a .6. It's not even a full FTE, it's a .6.
Yeah,
It's a
okay.
part-time.
We remembered how the last one went from partial to full.
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead with my motion.
Yeah, yeah, we've clarified that, yeah. Deputy Mayor Sherlock, go ahead, please.
Thank you. I move adoption of ordinance 2022-641, amending the 2022 budget by reclassifying some positions, adjusting salary ranges of some positions, and creating a new .6 FTE position of Events and Recreation Coordinator, and providing an adjustment by fund in summary form for American Rescue Plan Act fund reporting and compliance requirements as presented.
Second.
All right, it's been moved by Deputy Mayor Sherlock, seconded by Councilmember Charbonneau to adopt ordinance 2022-641, amending the 2022 budget by reclassifying some positions, adjusting salary ranges for some positions, and creating a new .6 FTE position of Events and Recreation Coordinator, and providing an adjustment by fund in summary form for American Rescue Plan Act fund reporting and compliance requirements as presented. Deputy Mayor Sherlock, would you like to speak to your motion, please?
Sure. I know there's a lot in here and it's complicated, but I'm making this motion to get things going, and maybe we'll dive into some details. But I personally have read through everything and spoken to staff and feel comfortable with moving forward with this ordinance as presented.
Councilmember Charbonneau, anything to add?
Yeah, I would like to, sort of in that same vein, I would definitely like to encourage discussion on each of the individual components of this, right? Because you have the communications aspect, you have the community development aspect, you have the collective bargaining agreement, which I think is really cool that we didn't really cover, aspect, and the also the community events aspect. I guess I'll use this space to talk about one I think is really critical in communications. So I think it's been mentioned, it's been sort of highlighted as one of our #1 needs in community survey. I think it's really critical with sort of a community that no longer has a newspaper, who doesn't have a ton of active media. This will enable our communications to be doubled in terms of newsletters. It will enable us to get more engagement from folks. I'm very encouraged that we had competitive elections this past cycle. I'm very encouraged that we have more and more people showing up to be involved with our government, and I think investing in communications is really critical towards that. Currently, for folks that might not know, our staff person that covers communications also has to cover community engagement roles. And it's not a realistic ask of that individual to continue to do that. They are working overtime, they are working, I won't put a number to the hours as I have in the past. But to me, this is one of the most critical things. I think what we've seen when there hasn't been active communications is misinformation, quite frankly, taking its place. And this is one of the things that I just think is absolutely critical. Moving our excellent person who covers communications currently to cover communications full time and really let her shine in that role. And I just think to me, this is I would super move this if I could. This is just so critical. And I'll stop there because I know there's a lot of other aspects of this to discuss as well.
Councilmember Villasenor, is your hand up over there? Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. I just wanted to commend Planner Fitzgibbons for doing the work, investing in herself, investing her time and expertise into our community. I just can't thank her enough. I've worked with her on a couple of things over the past years, and I think the world of her. So I'm glad this shows up on here for her, and I'm happy to support this. And this is the kind of organization that I feel like we should be fostering. Where an opportunity for people to know that there is space for them to grow here in Newcastle, and I just want to make that very clear that that's something I support very deeply.
Definitely promotes retention, and Director Oscarthorpe has an amazing team, so they're great. Okay, motion on the floor to adopt ordinance 2022-641, amending the 2022 budget by reclassifying some positions, adjusting salary ranges of some positions, and creating a new 6.6 FTE position of Events and Recreation Coordinator, and providing an adjustment fund in summary form for American Rescue Plan Act fund reporting and compliance requirements as presented. All in favor, please say aye.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to make an amendment to the motion, please.
Okay,
Second.
you don't need to second an amendment?
My amendment would be, and sorry, you just had to read all that but I move to adopt the ordinance 2022-641, amending the 2022 budget by reclassifying the planner position to senior planner and providing an adjustment by fund in summary form for the American Rescue Plan fund reporting and compliance requirements as presented. So basically all of that while removing the .6 position.
Okay, there's an amendment on the floor. It's been moved by Councilmember Clark, seconded by Councilmember Lakotia, to amend the motion by removing the .6 FTE position of Events and Recreation Coordinator.
Correct.
I'm sorry. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. If I remember the structure of the ordinance correctly, what I believe the effect of your motion is to remove two specific sections of the ordinance and whatever is in the salary schedule that's related to them. And we're grabbing.
Yeah, City Clerk, I simply am interested in removing the .6 FTE position. Right, that's why earlier I had questioned about the word some, because it kind of creates a jumble now.
So, Council Member, if I can just, again, I apologize for the interruption, but this is for in the interest of clarity. The amendment does not affect Section 1 on the third page of the ordinance. It would remove the second section, if I understand you correctly. And would it remove the third section? The second section, excuse me, or only the third section?
The second and third section.
So it would be a removal of Section 2 and 3 and whatever is in the salary schedule that relates to them.
Correct.
Okay, so the actual amendment should, let me go back here. I highlighted. Should be to remove sections, amend the motion, removing Section 2 and 3 of the ordinance.
Correct.
And Section 2 is the salary schedule of the Community Engagement Coordinator and the salary schedule of the Events and Recreation Coordinator.
Correct.
Is everyone clear on the motion? Okay. Councilmember Clark, would you like to speak to your amendment?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I appreciate everybody's comments, and I certainly understand that the community has need for and a desire for more transparency, but I will go back to what our public commenter, former Councilmember Kameen, said at the beginning. And I'll add something to that, right? We have a lot of transition going on in our city. We have a new city manager and an interim city manager. One, we should evaluate, right? This is a government, right? We're always gonna, it's always gonna wanna grow, right? It's like a living thing, right? So I get that, we're always gonna wanna add positions. But I am concerned, and I'm going back to what I said during the ARPA presentation, we are headed for big problems with this where the recession is coming, we have inflation out of control, we're printing money on the federal level, and there's no stopping it. And I am worried that we are gonna be stuck with a lot of expenses with no revenue. So that is my main concern, right? I don't have a fault with Director or Kate Langsdorf's abilities and what she does, but this is not the right time for this. I will go back and say that we need to wait to see another budget cycle. By then, we will really be into this, more towards recession, and this inflation is going to be worse, and we'll know better what the long-term fiscal sustainability of our city is. I don't see a rush here. I appreciate that we want to get things done for people, but we can pull in volunteers. Councilmember Lacotia can provide plenty of volunteers for different things. And I don't have a problem with giving Senior Planner Fitzgibbons her due. Like Councilmember Villasenor said, she's earned it. I'm an engineer. I understand the value of professional development, so I'm all for that. And I agree with the fund transfers that we talked about last week, so I don't want to change any of that. I'm just worried about our financial future, and that's what it comes down to. It has nothing to do with can somebody do a good job or not, or do we need this in the community? I am wanting to wait to make sure financially we are able to do this, and it can't hurt to wait another cycle. That's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Lacotia, I believe you seconded it.
Yeah, I mean, echo the same what Councilmember Clark said, and we don't want to add recurring cost into our books right now. I mean, we just keep coming back to increasing our, staff. The current situation, I don't see that we will be able to sustain that much. Sometimes I feel we're purposely making a case for new taxes because, we want to unnecessarily add, more recurring costs into our books, and then eventually we'll come back and say, oh, look, we need more taxes. We have a great CAC committee that's doing a fabulous job, highly skilled people, amazing volunteers. They've done it in the past. We've had events in 2017, 2016, 2017, 2018. They've organized events, and they've done a fabulous job. And I'm sure they'll continue to do so. We have canceled the biggest event this year, 4th of July. That's our biggest event. We've already canceled that. So let's wait on this. Why do we want to rush on everything? Every time, it's like we're always rushing on things. Let's just sit on it for some time. Let's think through it, look at our position, and see whether we really need it. And we have tons of volunteers, not just, we have our community members, our citizens who are willing to help, who are ready to come forward and help. And they are willing to do that. Let's ask them. Let's ask our community. Do you want an events manager? But hey, in the future, it will come with more taxes. Are you willing to pay for that? We have a big retirement community living on fixed income in Newcastle. Please, let's think about them. Look at the property taxes. They're skyrocketing. The property prices are skyrocketing, and so are the taxes. Inflation, 8.5%. Let's go and talk to these people living on fixed income. Let's hear from them. Do they want this? Do they want increased expenses? I know we'll talk about level of service. Well, we are offering great level of service. The CAC community is doing a great job, and they have organized so many events. And I think their level of service is just awesome. So I just want to wait on this, and definitely, congratulations to Erin for doing a great job. I have no issues with that. It's just this adding of a new position is my pet peeve right now. Thank you.
Councilmember Charbonneau, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So there are a lot of things I would like to call out there. I think it's very easy to look at these positions and sit back and try to, claim the non-importance of it and delegitimize the work that is actually done. I'll remind folks this was a stopgap measure because that we've been following since 2019. We had 2 years without really activities as COVID was occurring. We had a community activities coordinator who had retired, and then the position was just sort of combined. And then there was work with consultants. Essentially, it's really easy to sit here and say there's no rush on this when you're not the person who's working 60 hours a week to do this work. And it's very easy to sit there and talk about platitudes of that every org needs more communications. We have been directly told by people that we need more communications. We have been directly told by people that they've missed the newspaper. Something I think folks are not talking about as well, the community engagement position is an investment in our community. When Skyhawks comes to use the facilities at Lake Bourne, that generates revenue. When we have more events and vendors come, that generates revenue. It's not as perfect one-to-one line as you might want, but that gives us, in some instances it is, that helps our city. That helps our city grow, that helps our city be vibrant. I think drawing a one-to-one line of creating a 0.6 position to new taxes is incredibly oversimplistic. I don't think that's fair. This is a stopgap measure. This is coming to circle back around. It's not even coming to circle back around in a full 1.0 full-time position. Again, I think it's really easy to take shots when you're not the one doing the work. It's really easy to get a community riled up about a position when they're not sitting in with the HR and they're not knowing what the city staff itself needs. But as a member of Salary and Benefits, this is what we need. I've been pushing for this for a while to make that communications full-time, to do what we need to do that, because you're going to see the cost in the long term, because you're going to have turnover, because you're going to have people quit, because it's not realistic to hold this position the way it is. It is absolutely not realistic, and you're going to incur more costs in the long term if you do this. So this is critical that we make this motion for all those reasons I just listed, and I don't think it's, I really encourage folks to try to think deeply about this and see where I'm coming from. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Eiskother?
And get the system to work here. I'm going to speak, Rob is not here, obviously. The Community Activities Commission used to be under my department. That's when we had Wendy Kirshner here. She staffed the CAC, and I think the point that needs to be made here is that we have volunteer organizations, but they need to be staffed. They don't operate in a vacuum on their own without staff, providing that staff support that they need. When Wendy left, we had Christina here that was our communications person. She took on that role. That didn't last. That was not sustainable. And when we hired Kate Langsdorf, it was with the expectation that she would kind of pick up where Christina left off. This is not sustainable. There's too much there for one person to take on, and that's really the issue with right now. If we want to continue to man the CAC, so to speak, there needs to be a staff person to take on that position. So I just want to make that point.
Thank you. I have a few things to say about this, actually. I will try to remain calm because I can tell you that I'm very passionate about this. So I was a member of the CAC for 2 years. I know what goes into planning our summer events. I know what goes into the staff liaison, the maintenance, the police, all of that needs to be a part of every event we do here in Newcastle. I also am currently working on a project at my day job. It's an integral part of being a planning, leading the planning on our multicultural event coming up in May. That event is got a lot of volunteers, a volunteer committee, but without paid staff, volunteers don't have contracting authority. Volunteers don't have, knowledge of what kind of paperwork needs to be managed by a municipal government to run events in case of liability or in case of injury, or Director Jacobs is over there, she gets it. So I can't speak enough about that. In addition, I don't know about you guys, but I received an email from Chair Majors, who is the leading the Community Activities Commission, that is 7 volunteers. We have 7 volunteers on our Planning Commission. They work hard, they deserve our support, and they deserve a dedicated member of the staff or members of the staff to help them do their work and accomplish their work plan. We heard through multiple community surveys over the past few years, we need to improve communication. We need to continue with our summer events. We have missed those during a pandemic. That is a big part of this community. And in addition, I don't know about you guys because I've handled them before, but I don't want to have to go through a grievance because we have volunteers doing union work. And there's so many other components here. You've got to look beyond the surface. I will not support this amendment. Councilmember Griffin?
Well, the point remains, after all the words, it's still probably not the right time to add to our budget for this year because we're already at 908,000. And if we add this other person, we're going to wind up spending a lot more money. And then we're trying to figure out how to spend the ARPA money. And it's just kind of ridiculous to be adding people at this time.
All right, we have an amendment on the floor, and the amendment is to amend the 2022 budget. I'm sorry. Amend the main motion by removing Section 2, Salary Schedule Community Engagement Coordinator, Section 3, Salary Schedule Events and Recreation Coordinator from the ordinance as presented. I'll go ahead and do a voice vote. All in favor of the amendment, please say aye.
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 All opposed? No. Is that clear, City Clerk White? Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to double check with you. Okay, amendment fails 4-3 with council members Charbonneau, Villasenor, Deputy Mayor Sherlock, and Mayor Newing voting against the amendment. Now back to the main motion. The main motion is to adopt ordinance 2022-641, amending the 2022 budget by reclassifying some positions, adjusting salary ranges of some positions, and creating a new .6 FTE position of Events and Recreation Coordinator, and providing an adjustment by fund in summary form for the American Rescue Plan Act fund reporting and compliance requirements as presented. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No.
Nay.
A motion carries 4-3 with council members Clark, Lucotia, and Griffin dissenting. Additional public comment. I will turn it over to City Clerk White. I believe I see Mrs. Simpson in the audience. Okay. Okay.
There's no one on the
Oh,
Zoom.
Okay. Good evening.
Nobody with their hand up. Let me clarify.
Okay. And you have 3 minutes to speak, and please state your name and the
My hearing aid back in place. Good evening, my name is Carol Simpson. I live in the Olympus neighborhood. There are 2 things I wanted to cover and comment with you this evening, and it's really great to see you this evening. It's still intimidating to stand here. Really, it is. Even after sitting there for 12 years, it's still intimidating to get here. In interviewing city manager candidates, I would like to add one item to your list of questions that you should ask of a city manager. And how is that city manager going to help you be better council members? Individually, how will that city manager lead you individually and encourage you to be a better council member? And also, how will that city manager lead and encourage you to work together as a better council? And how can that happen? And are you thinking of how you can become better council members? Are you looking into educational opportunities, training, working with other council members from other cities through the regional committees. I think that's an excellent way to learn to be a better council member, is talking to other council members from other cities. Stealing ideas from other cities is a great way of bettering yourselves and the council. There's a lot of opportunities to find those out, reading the public notices in the newspaper, using your salary to subscribe to your newspaper of record so that you're aware of what Newcastle's putting in the newspaper, and also the other cities that use the Seattle Times as their newspaper of record. The other thing I wanted to comment on was, how are you approaching ARPA funds? A couple of council members said, let's go slow. And I thought, that's a pretty good idea. But then you took action this evening to eliminate a few items off the list and want to take exception to that. You're acting too fast. Where have you seen this survey that was done of the community and businesses that was done last year that the city did, not your consultant? Have you seen that? Have you seen those results? Because I haven't. I'm part of the public, and I'd like to know what those results are. Now, I'm going to put a different hat on and speak to you as a member of a nonprofit group in the city of Newcastle. I'm the treasurer for the Friends of the Newcastle Library. We are a fundraising group, raising money as a cultural activity to sponsor events and programs at the library to make our library one of the best libraries to go to in the region, working with KCLS. We collect money, we raise money, and to do that, we collect books at the library, and then we sell them at the library. Well, the library was closed for 2.5 years, so our business shut down. We earned no money, and in addition, we were additionally hurt because we couldn't collect books, because we collect books at the library. People bring books in bags and give them to the librarians. We box them up. We do have a lot of volunteer hours. I'd like to speak a few more minutes, another minute if I may, Ms. Mayor.
That's fine.
Thank you. And we send them off to the warehouse that the library provides for other Friends groups. Well, the Friends groups had to eliminate some of their books because the warehouse needed more space for PP&E products that the libraries were all buying and using and distributing to all the libraries. So a lot of the Friends groups lost our assets, our books that we sell. So we were closed down for 2 years, directly affected financially by COVID. So I want you to take that into consideration when you look at the cultural and historic and groups in Newcastle and what do we do, and know your groups. I collect money every week from the coal car at the library and take it to the bank and deposit it. We are an active fundraising group, and I take pride that our group has never approached the city of Newcastle for a handout. We don't want your money, but we sure would like to be reimbursed by the federal government for our losses from COVID, that you have money to reimburse to do that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And just to double check, we have nobody in the Zoom room. Oh, we do.
That's correct, Madam Mayor.
Oh, okay, thank you. All right, I will close the public comment. Planning calendar. So what do the directors want to do, planning calendar, or do you want me to do it? I don't care. I'll turn it over to you.
I don't have it on my, I can try, want me to try and get it on the screen for you?
Oh, yeah, we have a copy. Okay, so planning calendar for the May 3rd meeting, our next meeting already in May, wow. We, like I said earlier, we do have the Bima House Historic Park and Subdivision proposal. And the developer's coming, Director Oscarthorpe, is that true? Okay, all right. And a bid award and probably a few more things will be added. We'll have more ARPA. And stay tuned, there'll probably be more. Okay, and with that,
I have a question.
go ahead, Councilmember Clark.
Director Bronze, on the consent item there, on the pavement management program, based on a meeting we had a couple meetings ago, was there going to be any follow-up from you on like what you thought the adequate spending was for, is that the same program that we're talking about here?
No, the item that was on consent calendar was a design contract for the Newcastle Way bus shelter relocation.
No, I'm sorry, on this calendar for next week.
Oh, that's to award a, sorry. That next May 17th, sorry.
T11.
T11, thank you. That's to award our construction contract for this year, which is going to be a slurry seal. So it's just a construction bid award. The item from the T13, the recommended funding,
Okay.
I've been working with the city manager to find a place on the agenda, but the backstop for that would be to bring it with the annual Transportation Improvement Program update, which was usually scheduled for June. It's either going to move up or back a meeting because of the town hall. So if not before, it would come to you in the second June meeting.
Thank you. I got my T numbers backwards. Thank you.
Sure, no problem.
And then,
Someone be sharp enough.
yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Director Bronze, just for clarification, the instance you were mentioning would also be where we could have the conversation about like, sort of like the CPI level we'd like to see, and in regards to pavement and all that?
Correct. Basically, my, the intention would be to continue that conversation about the recommended funding level. So either increase the funding and maintain our PCI, pavement condition index goal, or we lower the index and then do not raise the expenditure, or the combination is you just ignore the policy and keep the funding where it's at. So that's the discussion.
All right. Seeing nothing else?
I make one final comment?
Okay, go
Please.
ahead.
I just want to say that I appreciate that we had a good discussion tonight without any, animosity. Maybe internally you felt that way, but it's much better than what we've been having on Zoom. So I hope all you agree, and I hope we continue, right? I mean, we're obviously not going to agree on things clearly, but there's no reason we can't talk about it reasonably, like our policy manual says we should do. So thank you all. I appreciate it. My 2 cents.
All right. Thank you. And I will adjourn the meeting and give you 15 minutes back to your evening. Thanks, everyone.
like if two people are already on, like the
Right.
third one like will flash at you or something like that. Maybe the
Oh,
third
yeah,
one.
you're
I
right.
think
That
that's what
is
it is, and I didn't remember that from before.
I thought it was.
Took votes.